Now I will present the module 2, the needs of the senior citizens and their caretakers. In this module, we focus on the older adults and their caretakers. We begin by going through some specific characteristics and the needs that older adults have and that we need to consider and acknowledge. Then we move on to how we support the needs of older adults in the built environment. We continue by going through working with older adults and their caregivers, outlining all the issues that may come up and how we can address them. And we finish with going through the general strategies of putting people in the center of design. Now let me say a bit more about each of these sections. So in the section characteristics and needs of older adults, we first go through the physical impairments that many older adults face and some of the common diseases they may get. So we mention the high risk for many diseases such as arthritis or sarcopenia and cancer. We also go through the declines in mobility, strength, and endurance that many older adults face. Also, older adults are not very physically active, even though it's very recommended that they are. Then in the section of cognitive changes, we go through the declines in attention, working memory, and long-term memory that are typical for many older adults. These declines can progress to mild cognitive impairment and dementia, and this can be observed in real life in many ways. So in the early stages, it could just mean slower task learning or performance, and as it gets worse, it means increased dependency on other people to help them. Then we go through the social changes and issues. One of these is retirement. That every older adults probably went through at some point, and against common misconception, it can actually be a positive thing for health, physical and mental. We also talk about bereavement or losing somebody close to you. That's, of course, increasingly more common as one ages, and the reactions to it can be very strong. Isolation and loneliness become important issues as well, and we go through this quite in depth. Then we also mention and describe psychological changes and mental disorders. Like, we do notice some personality changes in older adults. They tend to have a bit lower self-discipline. They tend to do stuff that's enjoyable but not necessarily good for their health. At the same time, they are a bit less nervous in life, less anxious, and they find it easier to relax. So mental disorders are actually less common than in younger adults, but of course they are still problematic. One major issue is that these disorders can be manifested differently in older adults than in younger people, and they can be, because of that, harder to detect. In the section supporting the needs of older adults in the built environment, we first go through accessibility and safety. Here we like to describe all of the important elements that make buildings safe and accessible to all users. So we talk about how circulation and access routes should be clear and suitable for every building user, and how using contrasting materials can improve visibility and orientation in a building, or how careful selection of materials is really important. We want handrails probably made of wood and not of steel, because wooden ones are quite comfortable, warm, and enable a good grip, and metal ones do not. And these changes depend on which furnishing we're talking about. Then we talk about the general building for health solutions. Now here we go through all kinds of things that are important for every building. How to improve environmental quality, so the indoor air, lighting, noise, and other aspects. Really important is biophilic design, or bringing nature indoors. It shows that research shows that humans tend to be more relaxed, perform better cognitively when we are in presence of elements of nature. We also encourage physical activity. Some aspect of design can actually make building users more physically active. And then we go through addressing impairment, physical and cognitive, and supporting psychological well-being. So we mentioned how aspects such as light and symmetry and colors can be used to make buildings clearer to navigate, which is especially important with people with dementia and cognitive impairment. Similarly, sensory stimulation, perhaps best delivered through a garden, can be very helpful. As isolation is quite an issue with older adults, we also talk how can we promote social interaction with certain design features in the built environment, and of course, while considering the needs for privacy. Then we also go to assistive technology. We talk about telecare and telehealth, how technologies such as alarms and fall detection, bed sensors can help both older adults and their caregivers. Similarly, for smart furniture and devices such as pill dispensers and assistive mobile applications and robots. Our next section talks about how working with older adults and their caregivers can be and what things are good to consider. We start with common challenges, and one of those is overcoming stigma. We notice that perception and attitudes towards older adults are often quite negative, and when they are negative, it becomes really hard to work properly with older adults and make them feel good about themselves. So we talk about how we should speak with them and how we should work with cognitively impaired older adults, what skills are required. Then you go through digital skills of users. So the research shows that many today's older adults feels quite alienated from the digital culture. They don't really believe they fit in. At the same time, that's not true for everybody, and we do notice different levels of skills in different older adults. So we should not have an assumption that no older adults can use technology. But at the same time, older adults are often familiar with only specific activities like sending email, but they're not familiar with many others that would make their lives much, much easier. So it often happens they do not really want to accept new technology. They use it less than younger adults, and they're not always willing to use it more. Now, this is a very complex issue, and it depends on user characteristics and social context, technology design, and features, and how the technology is delivered. But the main point is they are willing to learn and use technology if they see it as useful and if it's delivered to them in the right way. Okay, and our final section goes to the human-centric design strategies in general. So the main point of such design strategies, as the word says, is centering the user and their needs as the most important aspect of design. So here we emphasize diverse user needs, physical, mental, emotional, social, and how these need to be the main goal in design. And this design aims to be universal, friendly to all users, but at the same time it aims to be flexible so different users can adapt the environment to their needs. One of the important aspects is that users are involved throughout all stages in the process of design. They're involved early and they continue to be involved in all stages, and their feedback and opinion is of crucial importance. Next, we talk about how we identify user needs, how can we learn from existing data of the already existing research, but also how conducting our own research through surveys and interviews and other methods can be really useful in getting good data that can help us identify user needs. And then we also talk about specific aspects of research when this is conducted on older adults. So how research has to be, what adaptation needs to have, so older adults are finding it easier to participate. And finally, we talk about developing and validating solutions. So here we start from user needs and how this could be translated to concepts and prototypes. We emphasize how this is a process that is constantly cycling and repeating itself. So we get some feedback, revise the concepts and prototypes, we put them there, we get some new feedback, and so on until we arrive to a satisfying solution. And then finally, we do test this solution with several methods. If errors were made, how people were satisfied, were they really tired after using it, and so on. That's it from my side. Thank you for your attention.